Joseph Williams is in Washington, a reporter with U.S. News and World Report. He covers the White House, national politics. Hi, Joseph. Thanks for doing this.
Hi, good to see you.
Donald Trump riding her in a hermetically sealed car, pumped up on steroids, exposing Secret Service agents and others, to say hi to people and campaign a little bit outside Walter Reed Medical Center. I mean, everybody's head is spinning at this point. It's pretty remarkable. And I think from a medical point of view, it's pretty outrageous, at least the way we see it from here in London.
There are a couple of things that tick the outrage meter. The first and foremost is the fact that we're here at all, right? I mean, this is a president who abjectly denied the fact that this virus was harmful, took great pains to avoid wearing masks, saw anyone who wore a mask as somebody evidencing weakness, right? So number one, the fact that we're here in the first place is just, it's even hard to overstate how absurd and ridiculous that is. So that's number one. And number two, this man has the best medical advice and medical teams at his disposal. Yet for years, not years, but ever since the virus took place 6 months ago, he has refused.
It feels like years.
He feels like, it only feels like years, exactly. But he's refused the advice of medical professionals and had tried to downplay the virus, even though in private he admitted how horrible and how potentially deadly this virus is. So that's the second part that has people's heads spinning. The third part is that we can't get a straight answer from the White House about what his condition was, how bad it was, what's his condition now, what the general prognosis is.
No oxygen. Exactly. Now there is oxygen.
No oxygen. He's on steroids now. Yeah. Well, the steroids are good. He's on an experimental drug. He's on another drug that they're using only for the most extreme patients, but he could walk out of here tomorrow. We think he's doing so well that he's got the strength of 10 men. So there's a bunch of factors at work here that lead us to question whether or not we as Americans are being told the whole truth, whether or not the president has actually learned a lesson here, and whether or not this is going to be a situation that bears watching if he's going to relapse, because the virus happens very suddenly a lot of times, and if he's going to be in the clear, and if he's going to be able to exercise the judgment that a president of the United States needs to exercise.
I can tell you, after living through Prime Minister Boris Johnson's experience here, because he got COVID-19 after being pretty casual about the whole thing, and Britain, as a result, had the worst number of deaths in Europe. I mean, he originally got it, and then he didn't go into hospital for about 9 days. And then it became very serious. And then he was that close to being put on a ventilator, but he was on oxygen, and he said he came very close, to losing his life there. So, there is still a road to pave here in terms of Trump's recovery back. Maybe he goes home now, maybe he doesn't. But has it shifted the election debate now completely back, probably to where it should be, to COVID-19 and his handling of it?
There is no doubt that it has. Before then, we were talking about Supreme Court justices. Before then, we were talking about whether or not our tough guy president has what it takes to get the country back to where it was before he took office. But now COVID-19 is word one. You can't have a sitting president who is running for re-election hospitalized and not talk about that. So certainly the virus has reclaimed center stage. The open question is whether or not his message is going to remain the same, that this is all in the past and that the worst of it is behind us, and that I am strong and I'm in control, even though I got a virus that I was trying to tell everybody didn't exist and didn't matter. So his messaging on that almost certainly has to change.
In that video over the weekend, he said he learned a lot. He's learned a lot about the virus, and he's going to be sharing some of that. Any idea what on earth he learned that he wouldn't already know?
It's hard to tell, because if he learned a lot about the virus, that means his starting place was really not in a good place to begin with. If the leader of the free world, the leader of the country that's leading the world in the number of coronavirus cases and deaths, if he is only now learning about the virus, that speaks very ill of him. The second thing is, did he really learn a lesson? Because he's out parading around in his car, gathering, soaking up some love from some of his fans, putting Secret Service agents at risk unnecessarily. There was no need for him to do that. Yeah, granted, they were wearing hazmat suits, granted, they were wearing masks, but still, why do this? Why do this?
Look, we're of the same mind here. I think we both consider it a pretty dumb thing to do, but there are probably his followers who think that was a great thing to do, that he came out and thanked people and showed that he's strong and that he's with them. And it plays very differently to Republicans.
Well, it plays very differently with Republicans and also plays very well in states like Argentina, states like Venezuela, where you have a strongman leader. And we're the United States. We're not supposed to be that way. And if the Republicans are cheered by this, that says something very significant, I believe, about their party and where it is in the United States body politic. I mean,
All
we
right,
also have.
you just helped me switch a little bit to foreign affairs and American foreign policy when you start talking about overseas, because when you talk about countries like Belarus, which are right now, ignited in accusations of fraudulent elections, and there are sanctions against the strongman President Lukashenko, who is jailing his opposition. And, America is one of those, not one of those countries, it is the country that normally wades in here and speaks with moral authority about democracy and freedom of speech and free and fair elections. But how can you expect America to do that now when Donald Trump is undermining the democratic process in November, saying that he may accept the result or he may not? He may. It's full of these mail-in ballots. He's saying that's a stacked election, and he's not committing himself to a peaceful transition of power.
It's difficult to have any moral authority when we're that way, and you might have noticed that we have not talked all that much. At least he hasn't talked all that much publicly about Belarus, about Argentina, about Venezuela, and about all the states around the world that are struggling to maintain democracy. And on the contrary, he's cozied up to people like Duterte in the Philippines. He's talked admiringly of Vladimir Putin. He's talked a lot about how he wishes he were able to throw a military parade like Macron does in France, because these are all indications in his mind of strong authority and bold leadership. But it plays very differently in the United States, and it's very puzzling why he's gotten as far as he has with this kind of an underlying tone to his message.
Yeah, and he didn't speak out on, it's shocking that he didn't speak out on Navalny, the main opposition member who was poisoned with nerve agent in Russia. But, again, that's an example of him not willing to criticize Putin in any way or criticize the Kremlin. Can you talk to me about Biden? Is Biden on foreign policy, like Russia, for instance, since we're talking about that, do you expect him to be much tougher than Trump has been?
I expect him to be much tougher than Trump has been on Russia. Are we going to head towards the brink of war? No. Is he going to be fondly talking about his pal Vladimir? No, I don't think he is. We're going to go back to a conventional foreign policy, I believe, trying to maintain and enhance democracy on the world, doing a few things that people don't really notice that might raise the hackles of some human rights advocates, but it's going to be very much more conventional, very much in the mold of Obama. However, there are things where Biden split with Obama, including Iraq. Very famously, Joe Biden wanted Iraq to be divvied up into 3 states and not have the U.S. maintain a presence there for long. People said, well, no, that's insane. We can't do that. There'll be ethnic violence, from here to kingdom come. And his view did not prevail. But there were some who remind us of that. And there are some of us who remind us that Joe Biden knows a lot of the world leaders, but his is a very centrist foreign policy. So I would not expect anything beyond boilerplate United States talking points about human rights and about advancing democracy, which, while turning a blind eye to some abuses among allies like the Saudis and the Middle East and the not Iranians, but the Israelis. We'll probably have a more hawkish stance on Iran, although we'll probably go back into the nuclear deal because that only makes sense. But it's going to raise a lot of hackles.
Less hawkish than Trump.
It is less hawkish than Trump, but it's going to raise some hackles on the right. There are going to be some complaints about him acceding to Iran when everybody, including the Iranians, believe that this deal makes sense.
Carbon emissions, the Paris Accords. Biden has basically articulated that would America re-sign?
I believe they would, mainly because he is being forced to recognize, his left flank is forcing him to recognize that climate change is a thing. And the wildfires in California only underscore that. We've had significant weather events. We've had significant fires that speak to the need to get back into the Paris Accord, and the Paris Accord might not be enough. We might be there too late. So we're definitely going to be hearing more about climate change in a post-Trump presidency. But the question is whether or not we are able to do anything about it in time to save lives and property.
Afghanistan, really quickly, Donald Trump has tweeted, among many tweets from the hospital, "Peace through strength, bring our soldiers home." Now, he didn't say home from where, but he's probably talking about Afghanistan, and there's not very many left anyway. I think there's 5,500. They were going to bring them down to 3,500 by the November election. There are peace negotiations with the Taliban. Fat chance, in my personal opinion, that that's going to bring about real peace in Afghanistan. But again, on Afghanistan, he probably wants to get out. And will
Yeah,
Biden?
absolutely. Biden probably will maintain some kind of a presence, mainly because it is in our best interest to do that. I mean, the Taliban negotiations with the Afghan government, they haven't been going really very well. And as soon as the US leaves, all hell could potentially break loose. So I don't think he's going to hit the exit ramp quite as quickly as Trump is. But I do think there's going to be some discussion about maintaining a minimal footprint in the US because this is the longest war that the US has ever had. So I would expect if Biden continues on the centrist track, I would expect him to talk about removing troops. I just don't think that he would do it abjectly and do it in a way that could cause a very fragile government to collapse.
The biggest one I left for last, and that's China. So, I mean, it's really been Trump's punching bag on everything from trade to security, Taiwan. I mean, they've been overtly supportive of Taiwan. What do you think that Biden is going to change on China should he become the next president?
Interestingly, I don't think that much will change, at least as far as Taiwan and Hong Kong are concerned. I think that they will keep a very close watch on what happens over there. I think the Biden administration will do that. We're probably going to see a Susan Rice as Secretary of State. She very much is in the mold of Obama and the Obama years, where there will be a lot of talk about democracy. There'll be a lot of talk about protection from the Chinese. But Biden himself has also been using the Chinese as a punching bag. As a matter of fact, on the debate, one of those points that Trump tried to score is maintaining that China has eaten Biden's lunch. We don't necessarily think that that's true. We do know that Obama was not conciliatory towards China, but nor was he declaring them as a severe ally. As a matter of fact, on Obama's watch, the South China Sea bases started popping up. So expect Biden to draw a stricter line on China. He's probably not going to go hard, at least not to the brink of war, but he certainly will not let them go unchecked in their quest to expand power.
Joe, shifting back to the US, I want to leave it there with you, but do you think election night, a lot of people predicting chaos, a lot of people predicting that Trump will call his people to the street and to polling stations, and they'll say, don't allow those ballots, those mail-in ballots to be counted, that there could be violence. I mean, depending on where you stack up on this, you think you're going to have a result on election night, or are you going to have months of court battles and maybe street battles?
Well, I mean, I think that what will happen is going to be determined by how the vote goes early. I mean, so far, early votes have been at record numbers. In order to avoid that thing, to avoid any kind of unrest or questions, there's going to have to be a decisive victory or a decisive defeat by either one of the candidates. That's the only way I think that there will be unrest not taking place. I think that the potential for violence seems to be a lot more likely on the right, mainly because they are pro-gun, they are pro-Second Amendment, and we've seen people on the right bringing guns to peaceful rallies. So I think that that's more likely in that instance. However, I don't think.
I mean, you could argue, and because he's called them out, he has called them.
I was going to say that he has actually called them out and has issued a clarion call, and he's kind of walked it back, but not especially vigorously. So I think that if we have a decisive result, he may try to challenge it in the court, but there may be some people who will talk him out of it. If it's a divided election with many votes left uncounted through the mail, I think that will hike the potential for chaos. And I think that if it's anything but a decisive victory, there will be potential for unrest, at least violence at most.
Joe Williams, a reporter with U.S. News and World Report. Joe, thanks a lot.
My pleasure.